What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you a sort of off-cycle video, this time talking about Solasta 2's character creator. So, not all that long ago, Kepler Interactive reached out and asked if I would like to take a look at the character creation for an opportunity to preview it ahead of the game's early access release, to which I obviously agreed, and here we are. So, while the build they gave me access to does also allow me access a little bit past character creation, the version of it in this build is not quite ready to be shown off, but sometime between now and March 12th likely, or March 12th at the latest I suppose, I'll have a follow-up talking about a little more beyond just character creation, obviously. Now, with that stuff in mind, let's go ahead and dive into the rest of this. So the first thing you do is pick your campaign, though right now it's really just the main campaign, but in the future there may well be DLC that add more, or people might make more via mods and things like that. But what's interesting here is, as part of character creation in this process, we get a little bit of background on what the campaign itself is about, which is the fate of the Colwall family, which means you're not going to be able to change the character's last name for this particular campaign. But either way, let's talk about character creation itself now. So when you go to start up a new campaign, you have a few different options for building out your party, but what's important here to know actually is that you are playing the entire party in this game. You can, if you want to, sort of designate one of them as the character you like the most and will be running around as the most, but understand that the entire party takes part in conversations, has to be kept alive, things like that. You are playing all 4 of these characters. But how you make them has a few different options. You can select from a few pre-made characters, as was the case in the original Solasta. There are 6 of them pre-made here. I imagine you'll likely be able to save the presets of the characters you make in order to select them as pre-made characters for yourself later, as that is also how it worked in the first game, as I recall. But otherwise, there is quick creation and advanced creation for filling these out. So quick creation basically sees you picking your class, your ancestry, and their background before moving on. Ancestry is basically their race, by the way, dwarf, human, elf, or halfling, at least for the early access period that this game is launching into. There are currently 6 classes available as well, which are also just for the early access period. They should be adding more as they go, those being cleric, fighter, paladin, rogue, wizard, and sorcerer, of course. But for quick creation, they just, again, kind of let you roll the basics of the thing you want to create, and then you can change their appearance if you want to. More on that in a moment, but that's basically it. You kind of just pick the biggest choices that sound interesting to you, and then the game kind of picks the defaults of the nitty-gritty there. But I would imagine, like many people, myself included, you're going to want to, of course, pick the advanced creation if you're watching a channel like this, and so let's spend a little time talking about that. So here we walk step by step through the character creation process, starting with your class, again, based on what's available in early access, or will be on March 12th, that is. And we have a few other things to look at here. They kind of show you what the class is generally about, how complex it is to actually play based on a couple of different things, and then of course its professions and skill choices and the like based on D&D 5e, but specifically the 2024 rule set. That's important when it comes to picking stuff like a cleric, because you have to pick your divine order, for example, which allows you to pick between, like, heavy armor and martial weapons, or being a thaumaturge, which gives you an extra cantrip and a bonus to your intelligence check based on your wisdom modifier, actually. So even within the stuff that is traditional about D&D 5e, there are a couple of changes there if, like myself, to be honest, you're not wildly familiar with the 2024 changes. In somewhat of an odd twist of fate, Solasta 2 is actually going to be probably the thing that teaches me the most about it. However, the other thing I want to mention here before we move on from the class selection portion of this is that do remember that in D&D 5e you pick your subclass a little bit later, usually around level 3, so that isn't available like in this interface that I am showing you here. Now from there we go on to pick our ancestry, and this is important for a variety of different reasons because each of them gets a different bonus to various things. Elves, as always, can't be put to magical sleep, things like that. Dwarves have extra health, etc. Some of them have dark vision, that's actually pretty big. Solasta 1 played around with the concept of light and how that affects your attack rolls a great deal. But more importantly here, it also gives you a variety of different bonuses based on that race as well. So as an example, humans can pick up proficiency and like extra skills and the like. Halflings have an easier time being stealthy. They have that luck thing where they can re-roll ones on D20 tests, things like that. So perhaps unsurprisingly, picking an ancestry or a race that has beneficial bonuses to the thing you are trying to do is helpful, but not exactly required either. I will actually throw out a fun one just for myself, though. So elves have a lineage option. They can be high elves or sylvan elves, and high elves get a Misty Step spell for free at level 5, and if you combine that with something like a fighter who needs to get up close and personal, being able to cast Misty Step just for the sake of being a high elf isn't the worst thing in the world, and there's little bonuses and synergies there that I think are worth being aware of, and you should probably look through them. But then we have our background. So our background is a pretty big choice, actually, bigger than you might think. It's going to grant you proficiency in some things, as well as tools typically involved in the using of those skills, but it's also going to give you background features alongside improved ability scores. Now, when we get to the ability section, the cap on those initial ability scores is 15. However, the next screen after that allows you to apply the improved ability scores from your background, which lets you take them a little farther if you want. So when you're picking a background, keep in mind what class the character has, as the background feature can coincide with that. More on that in just a moment. But also because you want the improved ability scores that you get from the background to match what the class you are playing is going to be doing. Say if I want to roll up a strength-based fighter, then I'm probably going to want a background that gives me an improvement on the strength ability score specifically so I can take it to its max. So that's really important, and again, the background feature that comes with that background is also important, because these are effectively feats that you'll get to take for free via these backgrounds. Now, when it comes to ability scores, these work the way D&D ability scores always have. You can simply apply them yourself via a point buy system. You can auto set them, or if you're like me, have auto do it and then make the adjustments accordingly. And then the next screen after this is where you'll get to apply your background ability score increases with 3 points total that you can spend on these ability scores, up to a maximum of 2 per. After that, you get a bunch of bonuses to things like your proficiencies and whatnot based on the character you're making. So it'll show you what you already have, what your current bonuses are before picking up proficiency in that skill. So in a perfect world, you'd probably, of course, want to maximize the things you're going to have the biggest bonuses to. And so because you can get bonuses like being incredibly good at stealth by being a halfling rogue, you could get that all the way up to like a +7 right at character creation. Once you've picked your proficiencies, right at the end of that, it'll also give you the opportunity to pick up languages, though there is a comprehend languages spell as well. Without playing through the campaign, it's hard to say which of those will be the most important or how often they will come up, but they do have their own dedicated page on the character creation screen, so my sincere hope is that they would make use of that. But again, if you're playing a spellcasting class, the last page of character creation, mechanically speaking, is picking up your cantrips and your spells accordingly based on what you want to play around with. Now, one thing I do actually really like about this is that it does not just give you the maximum, it does take you through this step by step and also explains exactly where the thing you are picking is coming from, meaning that when I am picking the extra cantrip from simply being a high elf, it will have a page on character creation that tells me I am selecting that cantrip specifically from that source. Not that it was explicitly necessary to do that, but that's just a little bit of clarification that I personally enjoy, so I thought I would share it. And that also applies to things like your proficiencies, etc. It tells you where you are getting the thing you are about to pick up from. Now, before we move on to the appearance portion of this, I did just want to point out that with this preview currently being limited to character creation, there are some things I simply cannot see here, like the subclasses that they've added, which we already know about. I've covered those in a video. But I can't go over like every little explicit detail that we might not know yet, simply because they are not here, and also as a result, I can't check out the multi-classing, which we also know will be present. I just wanted to mention those here at the end in case you were expecting me to talk about them for some reason. Next up, we then have the appearance side of this. So if you click on your character's portrait or hit the Edit Appearance Identity button, it will take you straight into editing their appearance. I did notice that the walkthrough of the character creation does not specifically include this. You do have to manually go click on there. I just wanted to point that out because if you're just clicking through the options, you might accidentally miss that you can in fact edit your character's appearance, though as you're making your entire party, it won't be the end of the world if you do. Now, to be, let's say, very judicious about this next statement, Solasta 1 didn't have the most aesthetically pleasing characters in the world. So I would imagine a fair few people are interested then in what you can get a character to look like here in Solasta 2. And straight away, I will say that this system is already leagues above that original game, but there are some important things to note, I think. So first up, you're going to pick, of course, male or female, and then pick your head preset. So you can either pick just a straight up head preset, yes, or you can blend 3 different face presets. So on this blending menu, if you see the little change buttons there, you can click on those and pick which of the 3 head presets you would like to blend and adjust accordingly. And so because of that, it is possible to get other faces beyond just the presets, but you do have to mess around with this system a little bit. I'm going to be real with you guys, it did take me a little while to find an exact face that I enjoyed in some cases, as they could look a little bit janky otherwise. Now the rest of the body type is basically just down to like skin color presets, that kind of thing, with the next tab being facial features. Now you can pick eye color presets, yes, but you can also go in and change the iris color of one or both eyes individually as well. So just know that the preset colors can be a little basic, and you can get much more modular than that if you click into the iris color preset. Just wanted to point that out, and then as you can see here, you can get even more granular with like the different portions of the iris itself, which is a little more into it than I like to get. But even beyond that, you can also pick stuff like wrinkles, eyebrows, etc., and do all of the same stuff I've just mentioned. And so hopefully, just through mentioning all of that, it should be clear that this time around, if your character isn't the best looking person in the world, some of that might be your fault for not wanting to mess around with these systems. Just from checking out some of this stuff straight away, it does seem like they took some of that feedback from the original game a little bit personally, perhaps. However, we're not quite done yet because the next tab is then your hair, which lets you, of course, pick your hairstyles, beard styles, eyebrow shape presets, of course, the color of all of those different things, etc. Now, I will say I am hoping they add more hairstyles and beard styles in the future. Not that these were terrible or anything, it just seems like a slightly low amount, and I'm hoping throughout the early access period they simply expand this a little bit. I think the system itself works, I would just like some more options. But beyond those basic things, on the face tab in particular, you can also pick up things like various tattoos and art styles that can also be fairly customized. You can even mess around with the exact positioning of those tattoos beyond just the defaults. So while I didn't really mess around with that here, I just wanted to point out that if you actually look at this menu, you can adjust the exact positioning of the tattoos and things you pick out, which I thought was cool, which also goes the same for scars. And it seems like a really cool little base system there. Then there's also the makeup tab, which is pretty self-explanatory, and all of these same systems apply to makeup as well, but you'll have to forgive my own ignorance on that particular subject, as I don't know anything about makeup, and I'm probably not the best person to talk about that one. Last but not least, there is then the identity tab. Now this is important because this is where you're going to pick a couple of things, but most importantly, your personality as well as your voice. Voice is self-explanatory. There's 4 of them, 2 male, 2 female, but perhaps the most important of all of this really is your personality, and then of course whatever you name your character, I guess. But your personality matters because if you've played Solasta 1, you might remember this system a bit, but basically your character has like tags, and this comes from like their class and their personality and stuff, and there is also some more stuff even here that then generates what each individual character has as a conversation option in the conversations your party finds themselves in. Each of your characters represents your conversation options, all of which is generated based on the character's personality and everything I just mentioned, etc. And I just wanted to make it clear here that that system is in fact returning, so don't forget to set that. And then I'm not exactly sure of the ramifications of this right now specifically, but they did mention that having like personalities and things that mesh up with your class appropriately is helpful in some way. I'm not sure if they mean that just as like in those situations those characters are more likely to say the thing you would expect them to say, or if there's like some other thing beyond just that. It could be either or, I'm just not sure. But all of that I think is going to appropriately bring us to a close on this particular video. I certainly hope you enjoyed this look at Solasta 2's character creation, and if you did, by all means, Let me know how you feel about it down in the comments section below, which of course means to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz, especially if you're looking forward to seeing more about Solasta 2 as we come up on its early access period. But for right now, that's pretty much going to do it. So thank you so much for watching. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.